Now, before we move forward, I want to make sure that you understand something very clearly, and it's this. When as a Christian you open that abiding door of your heart and give Jesus access to your entire being, what you're really doing is signing over to Him the deed of your life, meaning that in that very moment you are giving everything in your life to Christ. That means all your past victories and defeats become His, as well as any current victories or defeats. But sometimes when you give God a bad habit like pornography or alcohol abuse or gossip or anger or whatever, you feel like He didn't take it. In fact, you feel like nothing happens at all. Sometimes you just wonder if God even heard you. So in that case, what do? Well, you give it to God again and hope that this time that He did hear you and that He'll give you some sort of sign that He's going to take it from your life. Well, when you repeatedly give God something, you actually find yourself caught up in what I call the gravity force of self-effort. Now let me illustrate what I mean this way. I have a pen in my hand, and it's my pen because it's in my hand. Now, what happens when I throw it up in the air? Well, it leaves my hand, but what? Only to return again. In fact, I can even tell this pen, I don't want you anymore, and throw it up in the air, but what happens? It just comes back and returns to my hand. Well, many times when you give something in your life to God and He doesn't take it immediately, you take on the burden of getting it out of your life. Well, so if this pen represents a sin habit, as long as it remains in my hand, I guess I own it, right? So what do I do to get rid of it? In my own self-effort, I try to spiritually get it out, and in doing so, I throw it up to God. Now, while the sin is out of my hand and in the air, I experience victory. The sin is no longer in my life. But by the time I start to help God and try to toss it out of my hand and out of my life, what happens? Well, the gravity of self-effort just halts the removal of my sin and promptly orders it back down into my own life. Now, the sin I just gave up in my own strength has returned. And when it returns, it usually does so with a vengeance, meaning that I actually begin to push the limits of the sin. Christians go through their entire lives trying to play a game of catch with God, only to have the sin that they throw up to Him again and again and again return to them. Eventually, you just grow tired of this game and you just become really what I would call disillusioned with God. In fact, disillusioned with the God who won't fix your life as you want it fixed. But what would happen if you just opened your hand and asked God to come take the sin out of your hand?